What has been going on with Starfield? Despite the game having the largest launch ever for Bethesda, shortly thereafter things very rapidly declined with huge player drop-off and dwindling review scores. That was the story of 2023, but to kick off 2024, things actually got even a little bit worse. But in the couple of months since then, we have gotten several very large updates for Starfield, and even earlier today, Bethesda laid out what the next major update would entail, and there are even new rumors starting to pop up that a DLC announcement or even mod support could be imminent. And while I am sure that many of you are curious about what on earth is going on with Starfield, I was also wondering, what on earth is going on with your diet? Why are you spending so much time cooking instead of gaming? Well, today we're going to fix that with today's video sponsor, Factor. With Factor, you'll get a giant box of meals delivered right to your front door, and congrats! Now you won't need to spend more than 2 minutes cooking this week. Because yes, Factor meals are ready in just 2 minutes in the microwave. You don't even need to use a plate. And for me, this is just perfect because as much as I hate cooking, I hate dishes even more. And you're actually eating good food. Factor meals are never frozen. With summer fast approaching, they can even help you hit your fitness goals through meal preferences like keto, calorie smart, or even vegan. And you'll still have over 27 meal options each week. And since you watched this video, I'm going to hook you up. Get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life if you use my link down below. That means you can choose 2 free wellness shots and 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. The major happenings around Starfield in 2024 have really been its updates. We got a major update in January and a smaller but still critical update in February. The January update was the real big one. Beyond having a ton of bug fixes, the main focus of this one was a variety of visual overhauls. 73 specific locations got their lighting improved, so this wasn't a comprehensive lighting overhaul for the game, but instead these specific areas had things reworked. And while some of these are largely minor, more tweaks than a full-on improvement, some of the impacted locations did get a genuine improvement and just look far better visually. And while this wasn't a comprehensive lighting overhaul, with how many areas were impacted, you'll definitely notice some of these improvements as you're adventuring around. But some of the space visuals also got upgrades. Lens flare and the star visual overall were improved, so now you could actually see the circular outline of that distant sun. Previously, this was beyond our rendered distance, so you couldn't really make it out. And while this does sound relatively minor, it honestly is a major improvement for the game. I find myself far more often just stopping and watching the sunset because things look dramatically better. And there are even some better interactions with stars, planets, and planetary rings, so each of those will properly interact now. Water reflections were improved with this update. This is genuinely quite nice for New Atlantis specifically, as you see quite a bit of water here. But perhaps the single most important change for this one was around character visuals. They finally overhauled other NPC faces so that uncanny staring and general oddities and face visuals are basically gone now. NPCs in Starfield are finally starting to look like just generic NPCs that you could walk by and not think about. But Starfield's most recent update, which just dropped a little over a week ago, may be the more important one for a lot of you. The February patch notes weren't the longest, but 3 massive changes came from this. FSR3 frame generation as well as Intel XeSS were added. Specifically, the addition of FSR3 is gigantic, as this will lead to a massive performance boost for most PC players, and unlike with DLSS frame generation, FSR3 is not locked to a specific GPU. So nearly all of you watching right now can use this one and basically just got a free FPS upgrade for Starfield on PC. For me, testing this in some of the major cities, I had nearly double the FPS I was getting previously. This put me at a comfortable 100 plus FPS in each major city, but also when out adventuring or in combat, I was comfortably above 100 most of the time. But one of the wild takeaways from all of this is it almost seems like I'm on the low end of the FPS bonus. You can find tons of reports from players online that are seeing more than double FPS with FSR3, and several claim even being able to up the resolution to 4K and still able to maintain 60 FPS. It definitely took a little while, but Starfield's implementation of FSR3 is easily one of the best in gaming right now. And of course, the next major question is going to be, okay, cool, but can it come to consoles? Could we finally see Starfield running at 60 FPS on Xbox? Well, sadly, no. FSR3 uses AI to generate new frames in between existing ones. So you need a lot of data to feed the AI, and AMD themselves recommend having a minimum frame rate of 60 FPS when using FSR3. So like even before you turn it on, you're supposed to be getting 60 FPS to see the best bonuses, so it seems incredibly unlikely we'll see this on consoles anytime soon. But this update did have another gigantic change, as it finally resolved that lingering Form ID issue. Now, upon loading a save, used Form IDs are freed. Form IDs are all of the things you find in Starfield Starfield and even in past Bethesda games, but with Starfield specifically, there was this issue where your form IDs would just continuously count upward. The game has a limit of around 2 million form IDs in total, and unlike past games, it wouldn't reuse old IDs once they were freed up, or at least previously that's how it worked. So you would play more, generate more form IDs, and gradually as you approach 2 million, you would get increased instability, and eventually your entire save would break. This was founded and reported by modders a couple of months ago, but thankfully it was resolved with this most recent update. And this means a couple of things. For those of you with save games with tons of hours played that never went through New Game Plus, you should almost certainly notice a nice boost in stability. If you were constantly crashing, that might be totally gone now. And in general, this was just a background ticking time bomb that would eventually break a bunch of saves, so it's really nice to see it getting resolved. But at least as of right now, that's kind of it. Bug fixes, visual upgrades, as well as a major performance bonus for a lot of you are the main changes and improvements the game has gotten so far in 2024. If your problem with Starfield was around content or even content distribution, nothing's really changed on that front. Although, earlier today, Bethesda also shared some new details on what the next major update will entail for this game. Next week, on March 6th, this new update will go into Steam Beta. It'll include some new expressions that you could use in photo mode for both you as well as other companions. The scanner is getting improved, so you'll be able to loot resources while the scanner is open. Setting course for an inactive mission will now make it active, small, but definitely really nice across an entire playthrough, as well as a variety of other bug fixes are mentioned here. So another nice update, but honestly, if the other two I just highlighted aren't getting you playing again, I don't really think this one will be. But even beyond what was just shared today, we do have a rough idea of what else is coming to Starfield in 2024. Because back in December, Bethesda laid out their plans for Starfield in 2024 overall. They described a planned update cadence of every 6 weeks and described how these updates would include city maps, new ways to travel, new ways to customize your ships, new gameplay options to further adjust difficulty, official mod support with the launch of Creations, and our first story expansion, Shattered Space. So of course, as of right now, as we approach this new March update, we haven't actually seen any of this, but quite a few of those things could end up being pretty exciting and definitely could change up gameplay in notable ways. New ways to travel is definitely a big one. A way to avoid these absurdly long walks after landing would be really big for quality of life. I expect we'll see some type of improved jetpack to facilitate this, but maybe it ends up being a mountable creature or even rovers. Crudely made rovers were seen in the official Starfield art book, so maybe they'll try and add in something like that. The next most exciting core game feature is further difficulty options. A full-on survival mode could really up the fun you could have while playing, but something else is looming, as it's becoming increasingly likely that one of the next major updates for Starfield is going to include mod support. If not this March 6th update, perhaps the one after that, especially as that's getting us very close to patch 2.0. Bethesda has said several times now that mod support would be arriving to Starfield in early 2024, and from SteamDB, we could see that in early February, a new Starfield branch went up with CT Staging QA. This is very likely going to be Creations Staging QA. Creations is Bethesda's new word for mods. With Skyrim, they combined paid and free mods into one space, and this is what Creations are. It'll seemingly be continued into Starfield. Just a week ago now, another new branch went up with CT Beta Verified Creator, this likely being Creations Beta for Verified Creators. Verified Creators are the mod authors officially approved by Bethesda to post paid mods for Skyrim's marketplace. And seemingly, at least based off this, it very much so sounds like they're getting early access to Starfield's creation kit to perhaps make free and paid mods for Starfield. So it looks like this is imminent. It seems like there are people outside of official Bethesda employees that are getting access to the creation kit and able to start toying with modding Starfield. And to me, the most telling aspect of all of this is this new DLC entry. A few days ago, Starfield had a new entry added into its downloadable content section on Steam. Lots of articles popped up speculating this could mean a Shattered Space release very soon, but I don't actually think that. Instead, I think this is all around Creations. Because if you look over on the Skyrim side, you can see Creations have an entire page where you can just buy points and it is included on the DLC section. I think this is just the exact same thing being set up for Starfield, and to me, this is further evidence that paid and free mods will drop at the same time for Starfield. And it'll be interesting to see what exactly this entails. If this really is full-on Creations, free and paid mods at once, that could have a big impact on Starfield modding. Paid mods have really never been an option from day one, despite Bethesda's numerous attempts at implementing them. You'll have the Creation installation kit release, but then also an application form to apply to make paid mods. And I imagine there's going to be quite a few people that don't really want to make free mods if that option's immediately available. Even further, as I covered late last year, many mod authors have major concerns over the moddability of Starfield. Simply put, major portions of the game were not designed with modding in mind, which is quite a contrast compared to how things were with Fallout 4 and Skyrim. So these issues may have been resolved by Bethesda, but they also may not have been. As a result, modding on release may be a bit more restrictive compared to what we had for Fallout 4 and Skyrim. But the simple reality is, as of right now, we don't know. I'm speculating and trying to make some informed decisions based off of what I've heard from other mod authors, but frankly, when it comes to Starfield modding, there are just a ton of unanswered questions, but by the looks of things, we'll have some answers relatively soon. Beyond that, we're of course getting Starfield's first expansion at some point in 2024. Many of you watching likely already bought this expansion. If you purchased early access with the premium edition, the expansion was included with that. As of right now, we really have no idea when this may be dropping. Many speculated it would come early into 2024, but at this point, I think a summer release is looking a bit more likely. Xbox and Bethesda honestly have a lot going on right now, between Avowed, the Fallout 4 Next Gen update and TV show, a potential Oblivion remaster, and of course, this expansion. So I wouldn't be shocked if we start to see some different or more unusual release dates being employed just because of how much content they seemingly have releasing. Although we did see past reports that suggest Starfield had a longer than usual QA time, so perhaps work on this expansion actually begun relatively early into 2023. Maybe a release is coming sooner than we realize. But of course, even beyond that, there is the big elephant in the room with how many people will actually care about all of this. Like, okay, at least some of you. You right now are watching a Starfield video, so you care. But do you care enough to actually play it? Despite Starfield having the biggest launch in Bethesda history and getting glowing reviews from critics, things on the community side have definitely been sliding. The Starfield player count is now less than Fallout 76 on both Xbox and Steam. Although Fallout 76 did just have an event to bolster up player numbers, and actually since that event, Starfield has retaken the #1 spot above Fallout 76. But I think even just the fact that this is getting competitive is not a great sign for Starfield. And the Steam reviews have been dropping for this game. The overall has been mixed for a while, but now also just 59% positive. So that means 40% of the overall Starfield reviews are saying that you shouldn't be playing this game. And it's not like this is improving. The recent reviews are even worse, with just 42% being positive, so about 60% of recent reviews are telling people not to play this one. The updates have definitely been making a difference here. A few weeks ago, the recent Starfield reviews dropped all the way down to mostly negative, which is pretty disastrous, but it seems like likely due to some of these more recent updates, things have returned to mixed, which is definitely a good sign for Bethesda. But overall, things are still trending downwards. The recent reviews are more negative than the overall reviews. It does make me wonder if mod support and further updates will be enough to reignite interest in this game. Because one of the issues I personally noticed with content around Starfield is people just lost interest very quickly. This video is a prime example for me. Nearly everything I was posting around this point was getting around 100,000 views in the first 24 hours. But just 2 months after release, a video covering the best new mods for Starfield couldn't even pull half that viewership. So now of course, this is a super niche and very specific example. It really can't be extrapolated all that much, but at the same time, I think it's an important one. Starfield mods, I thought, were going to be my bread and butter for several months and really several years. But just 2 months after release, I was struggling to pull even average viewership on Starfield content, and speaking to other creators, this exact same sentiment was shared. A lot of people were just having problems with Starfield content that wasn't negative getting views. I feel like this is this odd intangible metric beyond player count. It just kind of feels like not that many people are interested in or talking about this game compared to some of the past ones. So it does leave me wondering, is this something Bethesda can renew with more updates and mod support? And frankly, I don't know. At the very least, I think there are several things around Starfield that can be improved, whether this be via updates or mods. A lot of the game's exploration is pretty straightforward and predictable. Right now, it lacks that special moment of discovery other Bethesda games had, at least for me. To me, it feels like Starfield is missing that sense of journey. Load screens hinder that and make particularly long journeys feel exactly the same as relatively short ones. So while I do have moments where I am taken aback due to the beauty of a planet or scene, oftentimes this ends up just being surface level. It's not like there's much more to do with that outside of just look at it for a moment. Compared to past Bethesda games, it doesn't feel like there is that reward for running over to what I am from seeing and experiencing it properly. But this can definitely be resolved. More dynamic or interesting points of interest are definitely possible, and even if Bethesda doesn't add this officially, modders almost certainly will. I imagine once the creation kit comes, one of the first things we get are new explorable locations. The economy is another just massive pain to deal with. The waiting for vendors to restock, stealing ships is relatively easy but doesn't pay particularly well, and the real core of money-making methods quite literally just being to wait a lot, especially since Starfield doesn't have scrapping, so you can't really just store or sell the gear you find. A rework here would really go a long way for this game, and it is something I could see get seriously expanded via mods, turning Starfield into more of an RTS with some of the outpost functionality. But even when it does come to certain notable locations, it feels like you really just have a baseline level interaction there, and a greater degree of depth is missing. The Red Mile overall feels like it should be ripe with gambling, unique interactions, and some very memorable runs. When in reality, it's pretty straightforward and surface level. You run the same route over and over again and get an award if you do it enough. It's not even timed, and just a matter of doing it a bunch of times more so than anything. But this too, if Bethesda and modders add in more features, things can easily be improved here. The odd part about this though is, as of right now, we really don't have any indication that stuff like this will be upgraded or updated by Bethesda. They already laid out their plans for 2024, and a lot of the major complaints around the game aren't in these plans. So I definitely think this is a situation where you have to keep your expectations in check. This is what Bethesda's adding. If you want something beyond this, you'll very likely just be relying on modders. Although, one of the other weird stories to pop up recently around Starfield is whether or not this is coming to PlayStation. We of course had a bunch of rumors from fairly reputable sources that Starfield was in fact coming to PS5 as a part of a new initiative from Xbox. Shortly thereafter, we had Xbox execs confirm that no, this wasn't actually happening, and instead 4 other games were going over. But I don't think this is the entire story. The sheer number of reports of Starfield going to PlayStation, coupled with the head of Xbox saying that they'll learn from these initial games going over, makes me think that this definitely still could happen. It would not shock me at all if Starfield was a game they were considering releasing on PlayStation, but then it leaked and got a cataclysmic level of pushback, and Xbox finalized their plans without Starfield going over. They're bringing over these initial games, and if they are a success, I could absolutely see more going over. Phil Spencer himself said he believes exclusives are going away, and for Starfield, a PlayStation release could honestly make a ton of sense. Starfield was a gigantic day one Game Pass release, and the biggest release ever for Bethesda. You quite literally couldn't have asked for a better launch with this game, but of course, after release, things became quite a bit more muddy as players became increasingly frustrated with some of the game's design choices. As a byproduct of this, a good chunk of those who joined Game Pass just for Starfield may have left shortly thereafter. The game definitely didn't have that staying power many were expecting, and when the predominant means to buy it was a monthly subscription, having staying power is very important. You need to get those customers to stay subscribed. I think in the longer term, their solution around this is creations. Starfield launching with creations or paid mods may very well end up being a gigantic revenue generator for Xbox and Bethesda. They've already employed this formula on the Minecraft side. They are making tons of money from Minecraft paid mods, and if it gets to a point where Starfield is making tons of money from Starfield paid mods, a PlayStation release makes a lot more sense, because even just beyond that initial upfront fee, you'll have a ton of people paying for mods over time and generating you a ton of revenue. So I could see this scenario. Starfield becomes a year-plus old game, most people who wanted to play it on Xbox already have, and it ends up debuting on PlayStation with paid mods being there from day one. So now to be clear, this is complete speculation from me, but honestly, I think this makes a ton of sense. To the point where when I saw some of those initial reports of Starfield going to PlayStation 5, it really didn't shock me, because I really am getting the feeling that Bethesda's longer term play around their games is going to be the sale of mods. But either way, those are my thoughts on what's going on with Starfield, as well as just a general overview of some of the recent news and updates around this game. If you are interested in more, get subscribed. I'll definitely have more coverage on Starfield and all things Bethesda as we continue to get updates on them. But until then, check out this video to see why 2024 may end up really being the year of Fallout.